Hello. Today I want to talk about Bethesda's upcoming Creation Club, or as some people are calling it, the return of paid mods. Now, there's a lot that goes into this issue, and I want to unpack some of that here for you today. The first thing we need to do is define our terms. What do we mean by a mod? Well, a mod is any sort of extra content developed by a third party that modifies the game in any way. This can be something as simple as some shaders that update the graphics. It could be a skin for a character. It could add a new weapon. And in some cases, it could add what we would normally come to see as an expansion pack. I've seen some mods that add entire continents and some entire new game modes. Obviously, we have to respect that Dota was a mod before it was an actual game. So that's a mod encompasses a lot of different things. So it's very difficult to actually nail down what specifically makes a mod a mod. But what we can do is draw a comparison to DLC, because DLC is something that companies put out, and oftentimes it looks a lot like mods, and these are things that we're already paying for. I mean, DLC as a business model is clearly doing quite well because it hasn't gone away. In fact, it's only gotten bigger. We see microtransactions, skins, loot chests, all sort of things in all sort of different games, and these could basically be mods. Now, the next thing we have to understand before we start talking about this is Bethesda's model when they're going into this creation club. Now, what they're trying to do is not simple. It's not as a modder, upload your mod and then split the revenue with Bethesda, 40-60 split or whatever. That's not what they're trying to do here. What they're doing is they're outsourcing development. They are giving out more or less development grants for developers who hit certain milestones and then deliver a finished product. So, in effect, what they're doing is that instead of paying their own employees to develop DLC, they're crowdsourcing that and paying for the stuff they like, and then listing it on their store. Now, we do know that they are going to be charging a different currency for these mods, Bethesda credits or Funbucks or whatever they will be called. And we don't know the conversion rate for those just yet. All we have is a mock-up image showing what some of those costs could look like. Ironically, one of them is mudcrab armor for Skyrim for 800 of these credits. Now, obviously, like I said, we don't know what the conversion rate between these credits and actual money are, but if it follows any sort of pattern that we see in other games, that's around $5 for some mudcrab armor. Now, of course, that's just conjecture. But it is interesting to note the DLC comparison here, because outsourcing to a third-party developer for DLC or for expansion content is something that developers do quite often already. You'll often see, or they might even just have a B team that works on DLC, while the main studio or the main team moves on to the next big project, whatever that may be. Quite often you'll see development studios outsource an entire piece of DLC or an expansion to another development studio and pay them to develop it for them. And once we understand all this, Bethesda's Creation Club doesn't look so bad, because all they're doing is the same thing everyone else is doing, except they're widening the market. They're allowing more people to compete in that space. And that's a good thing, to be honest. The real question, though, is should modders get paid for their work? because we as consumers have been used to not paying for mods for a very long time. And I think there will still be games and modders that continue to produce their work for free without any expectation of payment. But for the ones who do want to make it into a living, there is now a better avenue for them to do so. My concern, though, is that there has been no mention from Bethesda of any sort of revenue sharing with the developers of these mods. And of course, we have no idea what type of payment structure they're looking at to make sure that these modders get paid for their work. I want to make sure that they do. If Bethesda's going to be charging an absurd amount of money for these pieces of content, I want to make sure that the people who developed them actually get a chunk of that. And I'm worried that Bethesda's going to keep it all. They're going to pay out that little bit up front. They're going to pay out for those development milestones. They're going to pay out for the finished product. But they aren't going to incorporate any sort of revenue sharing. So, if a particular mod does exceedingly well and becomes a selling point for a game, which in Bethesda games is often the case. Obviously, modding is a big scene around Bethesda's games. And quite often, those mods can be selling points for the game. I just have a feeling that they're going to try and stiff the people who are helping them. And that leaves a real sour taste in my mouth.